So it's once again that time of the year where budget phone fans gurgle with delight as Xiaomi releases a fresh batch of Redmi Note phones into the wild. And as usual, the Redmi Note 14 series offers an eyebrow-lifting selection of flagship-style features and hardware for a fraction of the price. The only problem, as usual, is choosing one, because why launch just one smartphone when you can spaff out loads of the buggers? And today we'll be enjoying a lovely bit of three-way action with the 5G models. The Redmi Note 14 5G, the Redmi Note 14 Pro 5G, and the Redmi Note 14 Pro Plus 5G. The Pro Plus, unsurprisingly, the dog's danglies of this trio, and as you work your way down, you get various specs and features culled, but also the price gets a bit cheaper. So let's see which Redmi Note 14 phone might suit you best, and for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do poke subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! Now, if you have a good hard squint at the Redmi Note 14 5G series from the front, it can be quite tricky to work out which is which. The only clear indicator is the regular Redmi Note 14 5G has a flat display, whereas it's slightly curved at the edges here on the Pro and the Pro Plus. You've got slightly thicker bezels, especially down below here on the regular Redmi Note 14 as well. There's really not much in it, and they're all 6.67-inch blowers, so when it comes to one-handed use, they are a bit of a pain in the arsehole region. Although the Pro Plus's camera bump does jut out quite far and is quite handy as a finger shelf, just to make that one-handed use a bit more comfortable. The overall vibe is a bit more iPhone-y here on the regular Redmi Note 14 5G. You've not only got that flat screen, you've also got flat edges, unfortunately. Whereas the Pro and the Pro Plus have exceedingly skinny frames and a curved back end, which just feels nicer to clutch. And speaking of those frames, it is plastic all the way, even on the Pro Plus model, not a sniff of metal to be had. As for the back end, well, the regular Redmi Note 14 5G comes with one design option, this smooth matte finish. Whereas if you grab the Pro or the Pro Plus models in this purple finish, you do actually get a soft touch fake leather type situation. It certainly improves the grip and feels rather nice. As you can see, a slightly different stitching effect on these two as well, but you can also grab the Pro and the Pro Plus in a similar matte finish to the regular 5G model. So if, like your mum, you prefer a hard one, well, no worries. But just how durable are these phones? Well, all three of them have a pre-installed screen protector, which is always nice to see. In the case of the regular Redmi Note 14 5G, you've got Gorilla Glass 5 up front, so reasonably scratch resistant even if you did take that protector off. Although not quite as shatter resistant if you were to drop it, compared with the Pro and the Pro Plus, which sport the latest Gorilla Glass Victus 2. You typically only see that on flagship smartphones these days, so that's great to see on these mid-ranges. And also, if you spend a lot of time around water, you know, dossing around by a swimming pool, chilling in a jacuzzi or whatever, you're probably going to want to upgrade to the Pro or the Pro Plus, as they're both IP68 water and dust resistant. So not only can they get absolutely filthy, but also they can be fully submerged in water and should emerge unscathed. On the other hand, the regular Redmi Note 14 5G is IP64 rated, so it can get just as mucky as its siblings, but when it comes to water, it's more splash resistant than water resistant. So fine if you happen to, spill a bit of your pint on it, but I definitely wouldn't go chucking it in a bath, in a jacuzzi, in a swimming pool, anything like that. Now, to actually unlock these smartphones, where you've got an in-display optical fingerprint sensor on all three, which is perfectly respectable, nice and responsive. And all three of these scanners do struggle a wee bit if your mitts are mucky or moist, but you do have Face Unlock as a backup option. With the software, as always, you've got Xiaomi's HyperOS launcher squatting on top of Android. Slightly disappointing though that it's still HyperOS version 1 on all three of these blowers, sat on top of Android 14. I was holding out for the latest, freshest HyperOS version 2 and Android 15 out of the box for the Redmi Note 14 series, but hopefully that update should be coming to all three of these soon. And while Xiaomi hasn't yet, ahead of the official global launch, specified exactly how many years of OS updates and security patching you'll get with these bad boys, I would expect 3 OS updates and hopefully 4 years of security patching, as Xiaomi has certainly been a lot more committed in that area in recent times. Now, gird your loins for a hot bit of storage chat. The regular model comes with a choice of 128, 256 or 512 gigs of storage space, whereas the Pro and the Pro Plus start with minimum 256 gigs and again can be expanded to half a terabyte. However, in the usual cunning twist, the regular Redmi Note 14 5G does actually support micro SD memory cards to expand that storage. Right there in that second SIM tray, whereas the Pro and the Pro Plus have absolutely bugger all support for micro SD memory cards, just the 2 physical SIM cards. But on the flip side, you don't have any eSIM support here on the regular model, whereas the Pro and the Pro Plus both support eSIM, which is really handy if you happen to do a lot of traveling, because you can pick up a really cheap eSIM for whichever country you're buggering off to, which generally ends up a much better deal than just roaming on your regular home SIM. But the general HyperOS experience is very similar on all 3 of these smartphones. You've got the Google Discover feed, you've got your apps tray, you can drag down the old notifications bar from anywhere and then swipe to the side to access the control center. And you will notice slightly more features on the Pro and the Pro Plus. So for instance, the Pro Plus has the Xiaomi interconnectivity feature enabled. And that's good news if you've got other Xiaomi devices, as it can quickly and easily pair up with them. And of course, as for your AI type shenanigans, well, all 3 of these smartphones support a bit of Google Gemini. But at the time I shot this video, only the Pro Plus supported a lot of extra bonus AI tools. So for instance, you've got Circle to Search, and quite a few extra bits chucked away in the AI services section of the settings, mostly translation and summarization features. Now, some or all of these AI tools may also eventually be coming to the Redmi Note 14 5G and that Pro model. Fingers crossed in that HyperOS 2 update, but bear in mind the Pro Plus does use a Qualcomm chipset, whereas the other 2 are MediaTek. So the Pro Plus has a different NPU which handles those AI tasks right there on the smartphone. In the case of the Pro, you get a different MediaTek NPU. In the case of the regular model, I don't think that's even got an NPU, so it can't really handle AI stuff on the smartphone. You need to go online to do all that shiz. Anyway, that's more than enough banging on about AI gubbins. Now let's have a look at the display tech, and this hasn't really radically changed up at all compared with the old Redmi Note 13 series. All 3 of these blowers boast a 6.67-inch AMOLED panel. Got a 2400 by 1080 pixel resolution on the regular Redmi Note 14 5G versus an upgraded sharper 2712 by 1220 pixel resolution for the Pros. So visuals slightly more crispy on the Pros, although you'll struggle to notice much difference unless you really squint at these hard side by side. And while the regular Redmi Note 14 5G supports HDR10 streaming in the likes of Netflix, the Pro models also add a bit of Dolby Vision into the mix. I'll certainly be more than happy kicking back with a full feature-length film on any of these Redmi blowers. Although I did weirdly notice when I was watching the same film side by side on all 3, the middle of the bunch, the Redmi Note 14 Pro 5G, did sport slightly richer, warmer tones compared with the other 2, despite the fact they're all set on the exact same color settings, the default vivid modes. Of course, not really a problem at all, because you can go into the display settings and bugger about with the color output if it's not to your particular liking. Although it's only here on the Pro and the Pro Plus where you've got the advanced display settings, which allow you to get a bit of sRGB action on the go. You can also play around with the hue, the saturation levels, etc. And when you max out the brightness on these smartphones like so, the Pro and the Pro Plus do have a slightly brighter panel compared with the regular one. But the difference, again, not huge, and certainly even with the regular Redmi Note 14 5G, you won't struggle to see what's going on outdoors on a very sunny day. And it's a stereo speaker setup on all 3 of these blowers, although the output is slightly different on the regular Redmi Note 14 5G versus the Pro and Pro Plus. So let's bump up the volume of the regular model. The past couple of weeks, here's my in-depth review, and for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do poke, subscribe, and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! Now first up, and now the Pro. Design which stretches to the case itself. It is slightly confusing that the Huawei logo bit is around the back, and then up front you got all the small print icon gubbins. And then the audio on the Pro Plus basically the same as the Pro, and on the maximum volume the regular Redmi Note 14 5G and those Pro models pretty much the same. Not exactly going to be shattering your eardrums, and certainly if you are in quite a noisy environment you might struggle to hear what's going on in your bit of Netflix, your YouTube, whatever. But I definitely prefer the output on the Pro models because it's got a bit more bass to it, a bit more beef. It sounds quite tinny on the regular Redmi Note 14 5G. However, you do have Dolby Atmos support on all 3, and the Redmi Note 14 5G redeems itself somewhat as it's the only one of the trio to actually sport a headphone jack. But what about the performance? Well, all three of these Redmi Note 14 series blowers are powered by a completely different chipset, although in the case of the Redmi Note 14 5G and the Redmi Note 14 Pro 5G, they're both MediaTek Dimensity chipsets. It's the 7025 Ultra in the regular model, and it's the 7300 Ultra in the Pro. Although Xiaomi hasn't specified what's so ultra about these chipsets, because they appear to have the exact same setup, the same number of cores, the same maximum clock speed, and the same GPUs as the regular Dimensity models. The good news is the everyday performance absolutely fine on both of these phones, even if you're multitasking with many apps, zipping between them all as fast as you can and loading up the camera and immediately rapid firing some photos. Again, pretty responsive. But the Pro Plus is certainly superior to its siblings in this department with its Snapdragon 7S Gen 3 chipset. Just handle everything with a smoothness and a grace that you don't quite get on the others. As for gaming, well, again, the MediaTek Dimensity chipset smartphones did really struggle with more intensive titles like Wuthering Waves. That frame rate absolutely slows to a crawl at times, even if I was just running about the place, let alone beating 7 shades of shit out of things, or indeed having the snot absolutely pummeled out of my own pretty face. And this was just on the regular graphics settings as well. I didn't even dare to try boosting it up. So you're certainly better suited to a bit of PUBG, a bit of Call of Duty, some more highly optimized titles like that, which can run well on more basic chipsets. However, even the Redmi Note 14 Pro Plus 5G with its Snapdragon 7S Gen 3 did struggle with Wuthering Waves as well once I boosted the graphics settings to the higher levels. It was still playable and certainly nowhere near as lethargic as the other two, but I would definitely recommend sticking on the more medium graphics settings if you want a smoother experience. It certainly can handle those more demanding titles, helped along by the fact that it's got 12 gigs of RAM, whereas my review models of the other two came with just 8 gigs. And yes, of course I did use good old Game Turbo mode to boost the performance as much as possible on all three of these handsets. This also serves up all the usual do not disturb features, etc, etc. And as those names heavily imply, yes, you do have a good bit of 5G support on all three of these blowers. As for the battery life, well, you've got a battery capacity of just over 5,000 mAh on all three of these handsets. Pretty respectable, although not quite as good as some rivals these days, like the Honor Magic 7 Lite, for instance, with its 6,600 mAh battery. But you should still make it through a pretty long day on a single charge of any of these handsets, even with plenty of mixed use, good bit of camera action chucked in there. And for those who like a good battery test, well, I did spend 10 hours looping a downloaded video on all three of these side by side. I found that the regular Redmi Note 14 5G and that Pro model drained at pretty much the exact same rate, dropping by just under 60% over the 10 hours. Whereas the Pro Plus fared a little bit better, that drained just over 50%. So if you're on an extremely long haul flight and you're just going to spend a lot of time watching downloaded Netflix or Disney Plus or whatever, then yeah, Pro Plus again slightly superior there. And the Pro Plus also superior to its siblings when it comes to recharging, because you've got 120 watt wide charging support on there, same as the previous generation, crazy fast, versus just 45 watt on the regular Redmi Note 14 5G and that Pro. And for the Pro, that's particularly surprising because that's actually a downgrade versus the previous generation. Of course, they'll still charge up reasonably fast, you know, it's still just as good as a Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra, for instance. And if you want a bit of wireless charging support, well, you're out of luck, because none of these support a bit of that. It's cables all the way, baby. So now let's finish off this charming bit of Redmi Note 14 three-way action with a squint at the camera tech. And there's not really been much change here at all versus the previous generation. Although you do at least actually get a bit of optical image stabilization with the regular model, which comes with a 108 megapixel primary shooter versus the 200 meg snapper on the Pro and the Pro Plus. So a good bit of OIS on all three. Of course, you've got a high-res mode on all three as well, which shoots at 108 megapixels on the regular model, 200 meg on the others. Otherwise, a good bit of pixel binning with the full auto mode. You can drag down extra features by swiping like so. You'll notice that the motion track and focus is only available on the Pro and the Pro Plus, quite handy if you are shooting more active subjects, shall we say, kids, cats, etc. but very similar bonus camera modes, including a portrait mode on all three. You've also got yourself a dedicated night mode, and then if you swap over to more, you'll see you've got a full-on pro mode on all three. So you can fiddle with the white balance, the ISO levels, the EV levels, etc. And yes, you can capture a good bit of RAW format on those pro models as well. That's not available, sadly, on the regular Redmi Note 14 5G. And here's just a few side-by-side examples of photos that I snapped on the Redmi Note 14 5G versus the Pro and the Pro Plus. The Redmi Note 14 5G tends to oversaturate a fair bit, while also struggling to accurately capture colours compared with the Pro phones. But on the flip side, the Pro Plus was the only one of this trio that seemed to struggle with focus at times, occasionally spaffing out blurry results when shooting living subjects. So it was actually the Pro model here which impressed me the most in a side-by-side three-way comparison. And all three Redmi Note 14 phones also sport a not particularly nipple-tinglingly excited 8-megapixel ultra-wide-angle shooter, pretty basic stuff. And you've also got yourself a basic and mostly pointless 2-megapixel macro shooter on all three. Also a pretty big difference when it comes to shooting video. Again, the Pro and the Pro Plus are the same. You can shoot up to 4K resolution footage at 24 or 30 frames per second, whereas here on the regular Redmi Note 14 5G, it maxes out at 1080p Full HD, and you can only shoot 60 frames per second Full HD footage. Again, here on the Pro and the Pro Plus, you can max that out, as you can see there, but you can't change it past 30 FPS on the regular Redmi. And here's an example of a video shot on all three of these Redmi Note 14 blowers side by side, of course maxing out sadly at Full HD resolution here on the regular Redmi Note 14 5G, although probably a good thing as it's pointed at my mug. Whereas you've got a good bit of 4K action here on the Redmi Note 14 Pro and the Pro Plus. And last up, if you flip around to the front-facing shooter on these phones, well, it's a 20-megapixel selfie cam on all three, and it does max out at Full HD 1080p resolution shooting for your video needs on the full range. Although that said, you can record 1080p footage at 30 or 60 frames per second on the Pro and the Pro Plus, whereas the regular Redmi Note 14 5G does max out at 30 FPS. And it is also worth mentioning that with the Pro and the Pro Plus, you do get the AI Erase feature for your photo editing. So you can get this to remove any people lurking in the background of your photos, which, you know, always good because other people do suck. And there you have it, my lovelies. That in a tasty wee nutshell is how the Redmi Note 14 5G stacks up against the Redmi Note 14 Pro 5G and the Redmi Note 14 Pro Plus 5G. As you can see, quite a few differences. Certainly if you're all about a bit of power, a bit of performance, well, the Pro Plus is the one to go for with that Qualcomm Snapdragon chipset. It also comes with a few other big benefits compared with the non-Pro Plus models, like the super fast wired charging support. And of course, you've got all those AI tools if that really floats your boat. Meanwhile, the opposite end of the scale, the Redmi Note 14 5G lacks the sexy screen with the Dolby Vision streaming support, but you do at least get the headphone jack and the micro SD expandable storage, which you don't get on those Pro models. So which of the three are you most tempted by? It'd be great to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. My full Redmi Note 14 Pro Plus review is live right now. I'm hoping to bring you full in-depth reviews of the other two once I've slipped my SIM in there and actually used them as my full-time smartphone. So please do poke subscribe and ding that notifications bell so you don't miss all of that fun time shenanigans. And of course, have yourselves an absolutely ruddy, wonderful rest of the week. Cheers everyone. Love you.